the cold barrel of a sawed-off shotgun pressed hard against her temple. "Don't play hero, Grandma," the robber sneered. Blinded by the sight of a fragile nurse in oversized scrubs, he had no idea what he was truly facing. He wanted the pharmacy keys. What he received instead was a decorated combat medic from the Helmand province who had not felt this alive in over a decade. The fluorescent lights of Providence Urgent Care hummed with their usual monotonous drone. Tucked on the rain-slicked outskirts of Seattle, the small clinic served as a quiet refuge for the city's late-night casualties, colicky infants, minor kitchen burns, and the occasional sprained ankle from a clumsy stumble in the dark. Lillian Harper sat behind the triage desk, carefully sorting a fresh delivery for tubing. At 56, she looked exactly as one might expect a lifelong night shift nurse to appear. Her posture carried the slight stoop of someone who had spent decades leaning over gurneys and filling endless patient charts. Silver streaks wove heavily through her dark hair, which she kept pulled back in a simple, practical bun. A pair of reading glasses rested on the bridge of her nose, suspended from a beaded chain that draped around her neck. When she walked, she favored her left leg with a subtle, persistent limp she always blamed on a clumsy hiking trip in her 30s. To the rest of the staff, Lillian was the clinic's quiet anchor. She baked banana bread on Tuesdays, covered shifts when younger nurses were too exhausted to work, and possessed a bedside manner so gentle it could calm a terrified child struggling through an asthma attack. "Lillian, you want half of this sandwich?" Brendan asked, pulling her from her thoughts. Brendan was a 22-year-old Prem student working the front desk to chip away at his student loans. Pale and perpetually tired, he looked at Lillian as though she were his own grandmother. "No, thank you, sweetheart," she replied, her voice a soft, raspy alto. "My stomach can't handle pastrami past midnight anymore." "You eat it. You'll need the protein to survive organic chemistry." Brendan smiled and took a large bite. "It's just so dead tonight. I might actually get some flashcards done." "Do you ever get bored, Lillian? Just sitting here waiting for someone to come in with a stubbed toe?" Lillian paused, her fingers resting lightly on a sealed package of lactated Ringer's solution. She gazed past him toward the reinforced glass windows and the pitch-black parking lot beyond. Bored. It was a word civilians used when they failed to understand the rare gift of silence. She never spoke to Brendan about the life she had lived before Providence Urgent Care. She never mentioned the blistering heat of the Helmand province, nor her years as a sergeant first class with the 212th Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. She certainly never described the nights she spent in the back of Black Hawk helicopters under heavy mortar fire. Her bare hands plunged deep into the chests of young soldiers, manually clamping severed arteries while shrapnel rained from the sky. The limp had nothing to do with any hiking accident. It came from a 7.62 mm round that shattered her femur during a convoy ambush outside Kandahar. The neatly framed nursing degree on the clinic wall said nothing of the silver star that lay hidden in a velvet box at the bottom of her closet, the medal she earned for dragging 3 wounded Marines to safety under sustained enemy fire. To Brendan, to the doctors, to everyone else, she was simply Lillian, frail, sweet, predictable. "I prefer the quiet, Brendan," she finally answered, offering him a warm, practiced smile. "When this job gets exciting, it usually means someone is having a very bad day. I've had enough excitement for one lifetime." She rose slowly, her left knee clicking softly, and began wiping down the triage counter with a bleach cloth. The sharp scent of antiseptic anchored her in the present. It was clean, sterile, safe, nothing like the metallic tang of blood or the acrid bite of cordite that still sometimes clawed its way into her nightmares. "I'm going to check the inventory in the lockup," she said, tossing the cloth into the biohazard bin. "Page me if anyone comes in." "Will do, boss." Brendan mumbled through another bite of sandwich, already reaching for his textbook. Lillian walked down the short, brightly lit hallway toward the pharmacy storage. The clinic kept a significant supply of schedule to narcotics oxycodone, fentanyl, morphine essential for stabilizing severe trauma cases before transfer to Seattle Grace or Walter Reed. The heavy steel door required both a key card and a PIN dot as she entered the code. The silent shattered dot, it was not a sound she often heard in civilian life. But her nervous system recognized it instantly, the brutal, splintering crash of a crowbar smashing through the reinforced safety glass of the front entrance. The glass exploded inward in a deafening burst, scattering deadly shards across the waiting room floor. Lillian's hand froze above the keypad. Most people's hearts would have been pounding in terror. Hers did the opposite. It slowed. The familiar ache in her knee vanished, swept away by a sudden, powerful surge of adrenaline her body had long ago learned to wield like a weapon. The gentle night nurse disappeared. In her place stood the combat medic. "Nobody moves. Get on the damn ground right now." The voice was raw, panicked, and dangerous. Lillian did not rush forward. Years of training had taught her that charging blindly into chaos was suicide. Instead, she pressed her back flat against the cool hallway wall and closed her eyes, listening. Heavy boots crunched over broken glass. To sets of footsteps. To hostiles. "I said get down, kid." Hands where I can see them. A sickening thud of metal striking bone was followed instantly by Brendan's cry of pain. Lillian's mind catalogued the sound. A long gun, swung like a club. "Please, we don't have any cash," Brendan sobbed. "The register is empty." "I don't want the register, you stupid punk," the man snarled. "I want the lockbox." "Where's the pharmacy? Where do you keep the Roxys and the fentanyl?" Lillian drew a slow, silent breath through her nose and exhaled through her mouth. When she opened her eyes, the warmth was gone, replaced by cold calculation. Her hand slipped into the deep pocket of her scrub top and closed around the heavy titanium trauma shears. The tool was designed to cut through Kevlar and combat boots in seconds. It was not a firearm, but in the hands of someone who understood the human body's most vulnerable pathways, it was lethal. She stepped into view, deliberately exaggerating her limp, shoulders slumped, every inch the terrified older woman. Hey, stop it," she called out, voice trembling just enough. She raised her hands and shuffled forward. "Please don't hurt him. He's just a student. We don't want any trouble." Harlan Mercer stood in the center of the ruined waiting room, rainwater still dripping from his dark canvas jacket. Broad-shouldered and in his mid-30s, he had a patchy beard and wild, aggressive eyes. The sawed-off 12-gauge shotgun in his hands was pressed against the back of Brendan's neck. Brendan lay face down on the linoleum, blood streaming from a split eyebrow. Behind him stood Corey, younger and skeletal, trembling violently. He clutched a cheap silver 9mm, finger already inside the trigger guard. No discipline. An addict in withdrawal, the unpredictable one. Well, Harlan sneered, swinging the shotgun toward Lillian's chest. "Look what we have here. Florence Nightingale." Lillian let out a convincing gasp and took a shaky step back. "Please," she stammered, eyes wide. "Don't hurt him. He's just a kid. We don't want trouble." Harlan laughed, a harsh, grating sound, and stepped over Brendan's shaking form. "I don't want trouble either, Grandma. I want the keys to the heavy stuff. Open the vault." He stood only to feet away now, shotgun leveled at her abdomen. Lillian's mind moved with lethal clarity. Target 1. Harlan confident, arrogant, stance too wide, center of gravity off, holding the shotgun one-handed near the trigger, the other loosely on the pump. Deflect the barrel upward and he loses all leverage. Target 2. Corey, 15 feet back, sweating heavily, pupils blown from withdrawal, hands shaking too badly for precision, but a negligent discharge was almost certain. I can get you what you want," Lillian said, letting her voice crack. "The vault's in the back. I just need my key card, please. Just don't shoot. Move it," Harlan barked. "Walk fast. You hit a panic button and I'll paint this room with the kid's brains. Understand?" I understand, she whimpered. She turned clumsily, bumping her hip against the counter to reinforce the image of frailty, and began a slow, painful shuffle down the hallway. Harlan followed close, boots heavy on the floor. Faster, you old bat, he snapped, shoving her hard between the shoulder blades. For an ordinary 56-year-old nurse, the force would have sent her sprawling. Lillian used the momentum instead. As she pitched forward, she twisted her torso and reached not to break her fall, but to seize the heavy steel oxygen cylinder strapped to the crash cart. She dropped into a tight tactical crouch, sliding beneath Harlan's line of sight. "What the get-up?" he shouted, stepping forward and lowering the shotgun. He never had the chance. Lillian exploded upward with explosive speed. Her left hand grabbed the searing barrel of the shotgun and drove it skyward. At the same instant, her right hand slammed the blunt fulcrum of the trauma shears deep into the brachial plexus cluster beneath Harlan's armpit, right where his jacket hung open. The strike was perfect, delivered with the muscle memory of someone who had fought for her life in the most brutal places on earth. Harlan's right arm went instantly numb. His fingers spasmed and lost their grip. The shotgun fell. Lillian caught it cleanly before it hit the floor. She did not rack the pump. Firing buckshot inside a medical clinic with a civilian present was unthinkable. A weapon is only as good as the mind that wields it. Lillian Harper's mind was steel. Harlan stumbled backward, arm dangling uselessly. Panic flooded his face. He swung a desperate left hook toward her jaw. Lillian stepped inside the punch, dropped her hips, and drove the heavy walnut stock of the shotgun straight into his solar plexus. The impact was sickening. Air exploded from Harlan's lungs. He folded and collapsed to the floor, gasping and helpless. Target 1 neutralized. Lillian spun toward the waiting room without hesitation. Corey had watched his partner dismantled in seconds. Shock held him frozen for one fatal heartbeat. Then panic and withdrawal ignited together. Harlan, he shrieked. He raised the 9mm with shaking hands and fired wildly. Bang, bang, bang. Eyes half closed. No stance, no control. Bullets tore through the clinic. One shattered the reception partition, showering Brendan in glass. Another punched into the wall inches from Lillian's shoulder. She dropped and rolled behind the steel crash cart as more rounds chewed through ceiling tiles and fluorescent lights. Emergency backup lights flickered on, bathing everything in blood-red glow. He's panic firing, she assessed calmly. Not aiming, just trying to create space. She counted the shots. 7, 8, 9, 10. She could not wait for him to empty the magazine. A stray round would eventually find Brendan. Her eyes found the heavy red fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. She yanked it free, pulled the pin, and hurled it across the linoleum toward Corey. He saw the red cylinder sliding toward him and reacted exactly as she hoped, mistaking it for a threat. He swung the gun down and fired 3 frantic shots. The final bullet struck the pressurized canister. It detonated with a deafening hiss. A dense white cloud of monoammonium phosphate powder erupted outward, filling the room in a blinding, choking blizzard. Corey staggered back, coughing and clawing at his burning eyes. Lillian did not charge through the cloud. She slipped left into the X-ray room, moved through it by memory, and emerged silently behind the reception desk, flanking him completely. Corey was still blinded and disoriented when his heel caught and overturned for pull. He toppled backward. As he fell, his finger jerked the trigger one last time. A single negligent discharge cracked through the room. The bullet never reached Lillian or Brendan. Corey hit the floor screaming, clutching his upper left thigh. Bright arterial blood pulsed violently from the wound with every frantic heartbeat. Femoral artery. Lillian moved instantly. The combat medic who had just neutralized 2 armed men vanished. The trauma nurse returned. Brendan, she roared, voice carrying absolute command. Call 911. Tell them code red, gunshot wound to the femoral artery. Massive hemorrhage. I need paramedics and police now. Brendan crawled out from beneath the shattered desk, face white with shock. Lillian dropped to her knees in the spreading blood beside Corey. I'm dying. It burns. I'm dying. He gasped. Look at me, she ordered, gripping his chin with blood-slicked fingers. You are not going to die tonight. I will not allow it. But you must stop thrashing, or you will bleed out before help arrives. Do you understand? He nodded weakly, lips already turning blue. She had no time for a proper tourniquet. She unclipped the heavy nylon lanyard from around her neck, wrapped it high on his thigh, and used the trauma shears as a windlass, twisting it tighter and tighter until the pulsing jet of blood slowed to a manageable ooze. Brendan gauze. All of it. Now, for the next 10 minutes, the clinic was filled only with Corey's ragged breathing and the distant wail of approaching sirens. When Seattle PD SWAT finally breached the shattered entrance, rifles raised and flashlights cutting through the haze, they stopped cold. They had expected hostages. They had expected bodies. Instead, they found incapacitated robbers and a 56-year-old nurse with silver hair and a blood-soaked uniform kneeling in a pool of the suspect's blood. Keeping him alive, Officer Miller slowly lowered his weapon. Ma'am, did you do this? Are you hurt? I'm uninjured, Lillian answered without looking up. Self-inflicted gunshot wound to the left femoral artery. Tourniquet applied. He stabilized but going into hypovolemic shock. I need for fluids immediately. Miller stared at her, then at the unconscious Harlan and the devastation around them. Ma'am, how did you neutralize two armed men? Lillian finally lifted her head. Under the harsh tactical lights, the lines around her eyes seemed deeper, carrying the quiet weight of everything she had never been able to leave behind. They asked for the heavy stuff, she said softly, her raspy alto returning. She offered the officer a faint, tired smile. I simply gave them exactly what they asked for. Across the room, Brendan stood wrapped in a shock blanket, staring at the woman who baked banana bread on Tuesdays. He realized he had never truly known Lillian Harper at all. But as paramedics rushed in to take over, he understood one thing with perfect certainty. He would listen very carefully the next time she offered him advice. This story of hidden courage and extraordinary grace reminds us that real heroes often move among us, unnoticed until the moment they are needed most. If it moved you, please like and share it with someone who needs a reminder that strength can wear the gentlest face. Subscribe for more powerful stories of ordinary people rising to the extraordinary. Stay safe out there.